And we're live. Welcome, everyone. This is finally happening. We are at the WTC, the World Team Championships. We are in the great hall, in the great hangar, where 36 teams will duke it out for the title of the best team in the world in the game of Warhammer 40,000. I am Tomek, also known as Tweak, the host of Contact Lost. With me today, I have my co-host Joker.
Hey guys.
Sitting there in the background because in a moment he will run behind the camera to control the sound and do all the magical technical stuff. I have this esteemed group of people with me to host this amazing studio for you. We'll be here for like an hour and a half to entertain you, to explain to you how it all is going to go down, what is going to happen, what our roles are. And we hope you enjoy it and have great fun, as much fun as we do. So, with me today.
Hi guys, my name's Nathan. I'll be providing, along with Typhus, some hopefully good commentary about what's going on throughout the rounds, walking around. I've had 7 years playing at the ETC, including 3 podiums, as well as 2 years as a coach. So it's nice to have balance on both sides of it. My next colleague.
Hi, I'm Typhus, and I also have quite a bit of experience when it comes to this game. We've been at this event a few years. I've been myself, I think, 11 times. I've been twice a captain. I won the event. I've been also a referee for multiple tournaments, so I hope to provide all my expertise and knowledge about team tournaments throughout the whole event to make this whole idea easier for you to understand.
Hi, my name's also Nathan, but for the purposes of not confusing everybody, I think I'm just going to be Stats Dad for the purposes of the rest of this week and weekend of the WTC. I have no WTC experience, no podiums at the WTC to my name. Instead, I will be providing you with the same support I provide for Stat Check, the weekly competitive 40K stats podcast. I will be providing stat support, so you'll see me providing you with numbers, analysis. We'll look at factions and player performance over the course of the weekend, and so I'll be bringing you some very rapid analysis of all that will hopefully work out. We'll see how some live polls from BCP and stuff work and how we can put all that into something meaningful for you guys.
Right, so that's the team. This is the group of people who, for the next 4 days, is going to explain to you what is going on, is going to give you the latest updates at the beginning of the round and at the end of the round. So you will find out who paired into whom, which faction is playing against which faction, how the pairings have gone, and so on and so on. So make sure that you tune in to us, to the Contact Lost YouTube channel or the WTC YouTube channel, because those are the 2 outlets that we will be broadcasting this to. Now, I'll try to show you something on the screen. Hopefully you can tell. By the way, there is a chat. There should be a chat available for you to let us know if the sound quality is fine, if the video quality is fine, or just let us know whether you like it or not. But right now on the screen, you should be able to see the schedule. This is the schedule of the broadcasts that we are going to be doing. So we are not the only people who are actually here to broadcast. You might be interested whether we will be doing some streaming. Well, yes, we will be doing the studio, but that's not everything. There are also, I think, 4 other streams, because there is a stream in French. That's the
French Wargame Studio.
Then we have the Spanish studio, so El Cobrador, I think.
Yep.
Then we have Wargames Live. So Joe is here, actually, unfortunately without his dogs, but he brought all his equipment, and together with Adam Camilleri, they are doing live coverage. So they are streaming one of the tables, and there's Target Priority doing the coverage in German as well. So make sure that you tune in to them if you want to experience the coverage in German. Now, we couldn't really go further without mentioning our sponsors. So on the screen right now, you can see the fantastic sponsors that are helping make this happen. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. The terrain on the tables wouldn't be there, and it wouldn't look as amazing as it does. The food wouldn't be there, and so on and so on. Important fact, if you have the time, if you want to experience this firsthand, you can come to the event. Most of the sponsors have their stands here in the hall, so you can actually come and witness the paints that Army Painter has on offer. You can see the terrain that Hegemon has brought with them and provided for the tables, and the other companies that are here as well. So yeah, just make sure that you pop in, come over, say hi to us, say hi to the players, say hi to the other streaming teams. God, Australia is really, really loud right now, so I hope this is not interrupting this broadcast. But they are sitting right next to us and they are yelling at the top of their lungs. So, but that's Australia for you. So yeah, okay. Now, Nathan, how excited are you to be here?
I am absolutely ecstatic. It is the biggest thing I look forward to all year. Singles are fun, team events are fun, but this is the pinnacle of the sport, hobby that we all play. And I'm absolutely ecstatic to be here, and I'm sure everyone else agrees as well. This is the best event.
All right, Typhus, after so many years of, playing, being a captain, coming over to the event over and over again, is there still any spark of excitement in you?
Yes, for me, this event throughout the years was something that I was always looking forward to. I always had this month just dedicated to getting told what's happening in the 40K world, getting to know what's the meta, what teams are bringing. So I'm super stoked. Even though we might say that the game is not in the healthiest state, when you see what the teams are bringing, it's extremely interesting how they will figure out this essentially hard riddle, which is figuring out how to win such a cutthroat event, because there's no harder event in the world to win.
Nathan, how about you? I guess it's your first event, right?
Yeah, this is my first WTC.
Right. So is it nervous? How are you feeling about all this?
I mean, I'm nervous because I've never recorded a podcast in front of what is essentially a giant hangar full of people. Usually I get to sit safely at home in like an office and record my podcast experiences, or, occasionally in a conference room that I borrowed at work for some of the creme de la creme stuff. But right now it's very strange to have like lights and like a background and then 5 people in front of the
5 bananas.
Yeah. Props. Like we have a bolter and a plasma pistol and stuff like that. This is a little bit more celebration than I'm used to with the stuff that I do. So nervous is a good way of putting it. It's like a lot to do. It's definitely like kind of awe-inspiring. I think Neil, who helped organize this event, obviously, told me at some point I need to go up onto the second level of the hangar, because when you look out on the crowd, you can see all the different teams and their jerseys, which is definitely going to be something to see, because every single national team has a new jersey essentially every year, and they all match, so it's kind of neat to see. It's definitely kind of a wild experience. And playing in the singles, I played in the singles at least, until I ran out of brain cells to play my army because of jet lag, which was an awesome experience. You get to play against some of the team players, and you get to talk to them about why they're bringing their faction, kind of like how their experiences are going and stuff like that. They tend to keep all their plans kind of tight to their chest, but they like to talk about stuff, and it's kind of fun.
So I would also ask Joker how he feels, but because he's sticking out like a sore thumb, but he doesn't have a mic. So, oh well.
I mean, Joker can mime it.
I mean,
can you give us some charades
do
about
some sign language. No, he will have. Trust me, he will have plenty of time to be on the mic as well, because we, as I said, we will be here for 4 days covering this at the beginning, at the end of every round. So he will have plenty of time to tell us how he feels, what's going on, etc., etc. So you'll hear his wonderful voice as well. Now, Nathan, I'm extremely happy that you mentioned the fact that this is a celebration, because it does really feel like, I don't know, the Olympic Games of 40K. Like, I don't think there is a bigger event, a bigger teams event than this. Now, maybe let's discuss a little bit, what is the situation around the world going into this event? So what is the meta like? What is the world at large? Guys, can you tell me something like, in what place is 40K right now? Nathan, do you want to start?
So 40K, obviously now, we've just moved into the 10th edition of the rules. So right now it's a little bit in its infancy, and it was a bit of a mad scramble for all the nations this year to be able to figure out what the meta is, figure out what's actually good and what's not good. Because when you have the hobby that we have, singles meta and teams meta are so much more different. Teams meta opens you up to be able to take so many more different options because you're not necessarily playing the top two factions again and again and again. So with that, it's been a bit of a scramble to get everybody to try and break the meta or break the game to try and win this most difficult event.
Yeah, we have Eric Lathoris saying having serious FOMO right now. So yeah, it's a shame, Eric, that we don't have you here because it would be a real pleasure to hug you, to shake your hand. I think Typhus is the best person to tell us how much he misses you.
Do I though? I think after last year's, I'm happy he's not here. So, but to extend what Nathan said, this is an event that I think will shape the competitive game till the next balance slate, because everyone is so centered nowadays about GSC, Eldar, the top dogs of the meta that you see winning event after event. But what you will see is a lot of armies that the regular single players would not look into it because they swapped into Eldar GSC. And you will see a lot of newer armies just come up from those who had time to figure out why do Grey Knights work for US? Why is Poland brought Tau? Why do you have Guard in multiple top teams? Those armies are skipped for a reason for a moment. But if you are just new to following this whole thing, you can take away something because those teams brought those armies for a reason. And they will then be brought to your next single event, and you will need to know why they were. So it is a great thing how it will shape the incoming months of the 40K.
Yeah, so for someone who doesn't really know what's so special about teams, because many of the professional players, probably not the best word, but the players who come here, this is the pinnacle of Warhammer 40K. There is nothing better. Most of them even avoid playing singles, and they prepare the entire year for the teams event. So usually, if you listen to Enter the Matrix that Nathan and Typhus recorded, and Stat Check, where the other Nathan is present, you will very often hear them and their guests saying that teams, essentially the preparation for teams starts right after the event. So as soon as the WTC ends in 1 year, the preparation for the next year starts. But why is it so? Why is it that so many players prefer teams to singles?
So, apart from the obvious aspects of any kind of team environment is always more enjoyable than usually a singles type of game, I think one of the reasons people love it so much is, like I said earlier, it allows you to, or like Typhus said earlier, it allows you to use something that isn't just the no-brainer, I have to take this to win a singles event. You can actually be creative, and you can take the way that you can do your pairings allows you to actually take something that is super extreme, or either that be super aggressive or super defensive. You can be to a point where you can take a list and get a couple of points around, but you've done your team a great service in doing that. So the creativity that comes out of this event is like none others. And the amount of lists that people will be looking at afterwards going, oh, that's a great way of using that army. That's a great way of using this list. It's the thought behind it is so much more intense because you don't have to just try and win by small margins. It's how everything works together.
Yeah, and it's like when you build the armies for teams, you have to take so many things, so many aspects into account. Like Typhus, I think terrain and tables are also different here, right, than at singles event. How much different?
So there is a reason behind all of this. Nathan slightly mentioned it. We are not playing win, draw, lose system. This is a differential system, usually called by the people who play the system 20-0 system. So you're not necessarily playing to win by this one victory point. You're playing, certainly to given matchups like Eldari or GSC, you're playing to lose by a smaller margin. And if you play like UKTC events or US Open events, you have one terrain pack. You're always playing on a given table, given mission, which sometimes can get straightforward with how you are playing given game. But when it comes to WTC, this year I think there's only 6 different tables per 8 tables in a given game, but 2 of them are doubled, so you have 6 different layouts. But what it impacts during the pairing is that certain armies, you can skew them, like Nathan mentioned. You can skew them so they perform better on a dance table. You might be taking like Custodes on a dance table, and suddenly they have less bad matchups. Or maybe you will be tailoring your army to play for a lower end of a draw. So in win, draw, lose, they would lose most games, like Grey Knights or Orcs. Those armies do not field great win rates. But when you account for the table choice and they can choose where the objective markers are hidden on the board, it changes the gameplay way more.
Yeah.
And you can tailor towards that. Have a whole process, whole team figuring that one out, which I think is the best thing about this game, because suddenly you have ideas surfacing that you wouldn't see otherwise.
Right. So one good thing to probably point out is like maybe you, Typhus, or Nathan, you can explain kind of how that differential scoring system works. So how are you earning points then? Is it for every 20 points difference? Is it for every 3 points difference? Is it for every 5?
Yeah, so roughly, to keep it as little as complicated as possible, roughly every 5-point differential is another point.
Yeah.
So to 20-0 somebody, you need a difference of 51 points. So over 50. So where you might, like Typhus said in singles, only have to beat my opponent by a point or a couple of points. This is those couple of points. The first is it 4 points or 5?
6.
After
After 6, it's 11.
The first 5 don't count for anything. So if you beat your opponent by 2 points, it's a 10-10 draw. Whereas now you're trying to push differential, which means you can't just sit back for an easy win. You have to try and actually push the points. I have to get my cards. I have to stop them getting primary. I have to stop them scoring their cards. Rather than, oh, he can score 91, but I can score 92, so I win. Whereas this, now it's, oh, I need to get 100, and I have to actively stop him scoring points.
Yeah.
So it adds another big element to the actual way you play.
Yeah, and again, it was mentioned many a time in Enter the Matrix, also on Contact Lost, that building a team for a team's event like this is an extreme task, really, because you cannot just take a bunch of singles players or players performing well in singles events and build a team. I see Nathan would disagree, but we will get to that in a moment.
Philosophically, there's a question, but we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll get there. I mean, we have plenty of time, so we will get there. Not everything at a time. But as it was also mentioned, teams allow players to bring factions that maybe would be not as popular in singles events. And the meta of an event like this will probably look slightly different than a singles event that you are usually accustomed to. Usually, mostly, hopefully. Well, to talk about that, Nathan.
Yeah, Statistic Papa's going to talk about faction distributions at this
Let me
event.
share something on the screen.
So Jeremy, who is part of Team Canada as one of their coaches, put together this faction breakdown list. He's part of the Stat Check podcast, and I'm going to share it with all of you in stream. But we're going to look at kind of a summary figure, and I'll find out a way maybe to share this a little bit later where we can look at kind of the different factions that all the different teams have chosen. So on this graph, what you can see are different factions on the left, and then at the top, you can see all the countries. And then the bolded countries are the top 10 performers from last year's WTC. So you can kind of look for the top performing countries and see kind of what factions they've chosen. Now, the factions have been sorted by how many of these teams have actually taken these factions. And kind of like singles, at the top, all 36 teams, including the 2 UN teams, so 34 countries and 2 UN teams, brought Eldari, which is kind of to be expected. I think anybody who's been paying attention to the singles meta, or even who watched the Meta Watch report from GW today, kind of can see that. Second, we have Gene Sealer.
Wait, before we go to the second faction, Typhus and Nathan, you've looked at the lists of pretty much all the teams. I guess you helped your own teams prepare for the event. You helped them break down what their opponents have brought. So we see that almost every single team, or every single team, brought Eldari lists. Are those identical lists?
Oh, hell no. They're way different. I think some of them are Inari, not pure Eldari. So there are multiple choices, and that's the beauty of teams. You could imagine that their list could be kind of homogeneous, but that's not a thing. Even when you see those 36 armies, what we just mentioned, pushing differentials, choosing tables, certain lists will be better at doing that. So some teams brought like 20 Rave Guard, one team brought 3 Rave Knights, another team brought full Spinners and Fire Prisms. Or some teams have 3 Ravagers because they brought Inari. So there's different approaches, usually 500 to 800 point differences between the armies, but those impact how it will play and where its better matchups are quite substantial.
Danny Porter just wrote Cukier Tatuś. I think it's about you.
So one of the good questions I think both that Typhus and you, Nathan, can kind of talk about is, do you think that one of the key differences between like a team that's going to exit pool play and a team that's going to like make it to podium is going to be whether or not they've kind of like cracked that code on that Eldari matchup though? Like, who can take what a lot of people are talking about is like just a 20-0? Are you going to throw that somebody under the bus? Or are you going to have a list that you think can get a 15-5 or something like that? Do you think that's going to kind of differentiate us between like top 10 placings versus like the bottom 20? Maybe the ruder way to think about that, I suppose.
Yeah, so this year I think it's going to be very apparent one way or another that the way you manage your Eldar list, because it is, let's be honest, far more powerful than everybody else's factions, is going to be the key to winning the event. So it's very easy to potentially, somebody puts something forward, obviously we can maybe explain pairings later, but somebody puts an army forward and you immediately put your Eldar into it, and that Eldar army goes and gets 20 points. That is fantastic, but you've actually taken Eldar out of the matrix for everybody else in your team. So the matrix opens up at that point, and you start losing all the losses that the rest of your team were going to have. So maybe a more effective way is maybe the Eldar is held in your pairings till later. It maybe takes a 15 rather than 20, but you've messed with everybody's pairings up to that point. And I think even some of the rounds here could even be decided by our Eldar beat a significant faction in the other team, or our Eldar beat maybe a mirror their Eldar. That could be the difference between a swing and a round. So
there's one thing. Some teams think they brought counters for Eldar, which I don't think is necessarily consistent approach. But there's one thing you need to have in mind. When we are talking about pairings, you just mentioned someone being put forward. So both teams simultaneously put forward one player. We call it also a defender. Then you have, from both teams, 2 attackers assigned to that defender. They are revealed simultaneously, and then teams in discretion choose which one of those their defenders will play against. So you unveil them, then you know who is playing. But the problem is what I just mentioned. The defender will be also choosing the table, but also it is choosing one of the 2 attackers. So how it works, if at some point you think you've got Eldar covered, you might think you've got counters for them. You might not get it because if you've got only one, it will not work. If the other counter got used up earlier in the pairings because the process that I mentioned is essentially repeated 3 times until leftover armies are left over, that means that your assumptions how the pairing may go and how you counter certain top armies like GSC or Eldar is not a thing.
And then there is just one more variable, which is the table itself, because again, players get to choose the tables, so you can essentially choose the battlefield for you, right? That's also a factor that needs to be taken into account, right?
And then I think I have one more good question for people who are newer to WTC like myself. So when you talk about a matrix, and I heard Nathan mention the word, like the phrase matrix, I think, can you guys talk about like what a matrix is and kind of like what a matrix looks like for people?
Yeah, so in preparation for this event, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, one of the biggest things leading up to this is called your matrix. From this, you take your team's 8 armies and you have to pair them against the other teams, or in this case, 35 other teams, their 8 factions. And you basically have to go through and decide, custode list does well against this, does badly against this, and this. And then you then have to also factor in, how does that matrix happen if I'm a defender and I get to pick a table? Actually, that changes how that matchup goes. That could go from, actually, I play this on a light table, so very sparse. I'm going to lose that game badly because it shoots me off the table. Or I'm on a super heavy table. He can't shoot me. He can't dig me out terrain. I'm actually going to win that game, or I'm going to draw it, whichever way.
So did you you helped your team, so Team England,
Yes.
with the Matrix, for example?
Yes.
Does that mean that you and the team have gone through all 35 other teams, or have you only focused on, Australia, England, well, not England, but Australia, Germany, Poland, and just the top teams? Or have you actually gone through 35 teams?
We have gone through all 35 teams. Wow. However, we started with we'll talk about later, the pod of 3 that you start with. Then we went through all the top teams, and then we did a matrix. We go from, each player is also assigned which table preference they have in order of all 8.
Right.
So only a couple of captains need to be at the table. They know which tables everybody wants to pick. Haven't done the tables for all the teams, but we did it for all the top teams. And it's if you want to win this event, you can almost win it before you get here in some aspects. Obviously, there's luck on the day. It's very difficult to determine every round, but the amount of prep you put in is massive.
Yeah. Titus, how about Poland? So has Team Poland gone through all 35 teams, or again, focused mainly on the main contenders?
I think this year we went through tier 1 and tier 2 in quads teams. And because there's also one more thing. If you go through the top teams, usually the archetypes at one point start just coming up. Certain teams will have similar solutions. So as long as you figured out the first half of the event from the previous year, there is a high chance that every army you are considering is already happening in the lower tier. So it makes sense to not necessarily spend all the time if you have a very limited time, as in this case, you have 2 weeks. That's not much time. If you know that the only teams that can bring you down are the tier 1 and maybe some tier 2 teams, you need to make sure that those are your main target.
All right. We got a little bit sidetracked here because we have 2 guys who are very passionate about pairings, matrices, and so on and so on. But back to you, Nathan. Let's talk about the meta again.
Let's go talk about the meta some more. So faction choices, like I said, aren't terribly surprising at the top. So if you watched Creme de la Creme and you watch some of the stat check coverage of WTC, you kind of know from some of the interviews with WTC captains that there's a few choices that are fairly obvious, although some of the countries have done some very interesting things. So only 34 countries took Gene Stealer Cult. So there are 2 country teams that have not taken any Gene Stealer Cult. Then you have Space Marines that were taken by also 34 teams. And at least one top 10 team from last year didn't take Space Marines, which is something to watch out for. If you look at that matrix, you can see that Team Australia, in fact, did not take any Space Marines. And then once you start dropping out of kind of those top 3, things start to get a little different. So 32 teams took Custodes. Only 27 took Necrons. And then as you get further, this starts dropping more and more. And you have a lot of spots to fill. So this is where your faction choices probably get a little bit more interesting. Because after the top 3 or 4 factions, you're kind of digging a little deeper. Maybe in your country, you have a faction expert who's just really good and knows one faction super well. Or maybe you found some secret tech, kind of deep in an index somewhere, hidden in between lines that nobody's been able to find. So maybe, for example, Grey Knights, which only 2 countries took, one of them being the United States.
That means something.
It's possible that the United States found some secret tech. It's also possible that they didn't. Although you'd hope that a top 10 country from last year isn't like bringing something that is going to fail. But that's kind of like what this looks like. And like I said, I'll try to publish it. I don't want to go line by line through an Excel. We're going to pause for
There's a team warming up. I don't know how to even call that. Warming themselves up?
They're
or
getting themselves hyped.
hyping themselves up before the game. So you'll hear a lot of that right now because like it's the beginning of the event. The teams are entering
They're entering like the pairing
phase and so on. So there will be a lot of like
is over. So now everyone is starting to do pairings. So
yeah, and they're
everyone's-
winding themselves up and so on. This is just you have to come here to experience this because this is unlike anything else I have ever seen. A good question, and it's very awkward because Adam Camilleri is sitting like I don't know, 10 meters away from us doing the War Games Live Studio, and yet he asked a question in the chat. But I think it's a very good question, so I'm going to read it out. Any upsets predicted for this round?
Upset.
Yeah, maybe that's a little bit early to ask that question, but
so I think we need to get to the pod phase.
Through that.
We'll
Get to
get
the
when
pod
get
phase.
there.
okay, yeah, we'll get there in a second.
There's one other kind of stats thing that I want to talk about as we talk about meta updates.
Sure.
So we'll talk a little bit about faction performance, and I'll be tracking this during the event so we can see maybe if there are any changes from singles data, because the only thing we have to talk about for talking about faction performance is singles data right now. It's very hard to track teams data, and I kind of had to set up a very special conversation with Josh Diffie from BCP to make sure that we get the teams data so we can go through all of it and set some stuff up for you. So, Tomek, if you want to go to the
Next slide. Just one thing. I saw Joker just turned on a comment from an account called Adaptive Subroutines. I just wanted to say hi because this is one of the guys that we did an episode with, I think, in our first season ever, which was like 3 years ago. So I remember. I hope you remember as well. Go back and check it check out Adaptive Subroutines. It's a very interesting website. Let me switch to the next slide for Nathan.
Yeah. So anybody who's watched StatCheck is fairly familiar with the metadata dashboard at this point. So you can go to statcheck.com and go look at it if you want.
Make sure that you visit them.
Yeah, go visit it. But if you want, you can look at my screen while I try to desperately read percentages off of it while I'm getting yelled at by
Wow, USA is loud.
the USA wanted to be the loudest team apparently. So you can see at the top kind of like at least two of the factions that everybody took almost in Eldarian, Gene Stealer Colt at 70% and 65% win rates, 3.5 and 3.94 over rep ratio. So that's the number of them over their meta representation in top fours at singles events. So you can kind of see here that some of that follows the same trend. You can also see that the meta is very top heavy in that way. And then you start to see that there's like a lot of room after that to be getting different things in, which you start to see in the faction selection from the different countries. And I know that countries only kind of use singles data as more of a guideline, right? This is not going to be the end-all, be-all of using stats to guide faction choices and what you're picking. Especially since actually Typhus and Nathan, you both mentioned it, singles and teams are different. And did you guys look? Do you guys know if either of your teams looked at singles data when they were kind of picking factions or singles lists at all?
When you were looking for factions, at least in Poland, we didn't have singles data yet.
Okay.
So the new edition released, so we didn't even have time to look for it. So we were going through our own gut, and surprisingly or not surprisingly, we have came to nearly the same conclusion as the data is showing. So,
Nathan?
For Team England, it was more of a case of we were testing every army as they went along. It became apparent lots of factions were a lot better than other factions. Yeah. You could get to 3, 4, 5 factions, and then the last few were less.
So when you pick your last few factions, especially, like what are you kind of looking for in a faction when you pick those last few factions?
So sometimes it's can you think of an answer to a problem?
Okay.
So do you have a problem with Eldar? Do you have a problem with GSC? Do you need to take answers for those? When you start looking at doing, like I say, a mock matrix, you then look at it and go, so for example, we picked like 12, 13 armies and started doing a matrix with each other. Hence, kind of which ones look like they have a better matrix overall. So it ends up being you have to either take armies that solve a problem against armies, or you take an army that solves a problem in your pairings. For example, I need a put forward army, or I need an army which is going to go and get points for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's difficult when you get down to the last ones, where you have to really start thinking about either trying to be smarter than the meta or how to beat the meta.
Okay. Typhus.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Okay.
I
like it.
I have nothing to add. I have nothing to add.
I like
have
when
to-
both of our WTC experts are kind of like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that's why they are experts. So maybe it's. I mean, is there anything else about the meta that we want to discuss specifically, or is it the time now to go into the?
I think it's the time now to skip some of the trend stuff. We're not going to look at trends, although I prepared a slide for trends because I wanted to bamboozle you all with numbers because that's my favorite activity. Yeah, you can look at that. There's your summed things. We're going to skip it. Just skip that slideshow.
I just looked at it and I'm like, "Ugh."
Yeah, as a data person and a scientist, I kind of love numbers, but there's a certain point where I want to stop reading Excel sheets at you and making you look at graphs. Although I'm not going to lie to you, after every round, I'm going to bamboozle you with numbers and graphs some more.
I mean, I'm sure there is a bunch of people out there who are waiting just for that. So yeah, I mean, we have to.
There's no other reason to bring. I'm just kidding.
But I think it's time now for us to go to look at the groups essentially,
Yes.
and to have a look at and maybe answer Adam's questions as well, like potential upsets. And
because
so on.
now looking throughout the whole, I know you cannot see it, but we see groups of two teams just huddling each other via pairing tables, and they are very grouped into few 16 tables, 18 tables throughout the whole event.
Right, so I'm loading this on the screen right now for you. These are the groups that we here at Contact Lost drew about 2 weeks ago in the preparation for this event. So some of the teams, I've spoken to the guys from Australia, for example. They weren't too happy with drawing New Zealand because they all came from God knows how far away, and they are facing each other in the first round right here. But hashtag the Vols wanted it, so yeah, it has to be like that. Still, guys, is there anything specifically about this that you want to discuss?
So what I would say first, for those interested, what games are happening right now? Pods have predefined missions which are played depending on the round, and first round, which is happening right now, where now teams are pairing, is the team that is from a seed 4. So as per football, each pod consists of one team which was in seed 4, one in seed 3, one in seed 2, and one in seed 1. And those were predetermined by the previous year's results. And what you can see is that at the very top, you have the seed 4 teams. And at the very bottom, those are seed 1 teams within given pod. And they are playing against each other this round. And seed 2 and seed 3 are playing also against each other within a given pod.
All right. Okay. So how about the pods that we see over here? Do we want to go one by one?
Now let's go with pod 1 through
okay.
pod 9. So we can start with pod 1, which is Croatia, Norway, Ireland, and Canada as our seed 1, with Canada obviously playing Croatia to help people guide through the pods. Nathan, Typhus, kind of what are your thoughts about this pod, how it looks?
I think Norway will be a black horse in that they've changed their team. They completely swapped their players. They've been performing quite well. They were winning TTS events in Poland that they took part in. So they are a team that completely changed their whole image, and they come guns blazing because they want to prove that they are not the drunkards that just want to have fun. They want to show that there's some fire in their team. So when you look at this group, I think Norway, I wouldn't be surprised if it came second out of that group or even scraped away from Canada.
I want to say that Team Norway are the nicest people that I got to meet over the weekend. They gave me a yoga mat during singles, and then they also gave me hydration tabs. They also threatened to give me a neck fan at one point to keep me cool during the event. I say threatened because they were basically burying me in kindness all weekend.
And if it so happens that they don't win the event or their games, at least they are going to win in the flag competition, as far as I know, because
They do have the biggest flag. One of them came up
flag.
to me and said, "We bought a flag that's bigger than the U.S. flag, and it's supposed to go on like a 36 or 40-foot flagpole or
Yeah,
something like
so
that."
they are moral winners already.
Nathan, do you have any thoughts on this pod?
So this pod in particular, I probably couldn't name a pod with nicer teams, to be honest. Obviously, everybody knows the Irish are absolutely fantastic. For gaming ability, they're a bit hit and miss sometimes. Sometimes they're fantastic, sometimes they're not. But they're obviously in pod 2 for this year. So the Norway-Ireland game should be both the friendliest and quite competitive round. And I think that could maybe determine who actually finishes second or first.
This is an interesting round for this round of the event. I think this will be the one that can be the biggest upset between like tier 2, seed 2, and seed 3.
So I wanted to ask about Canada, because Canada was in the pot number 1, I think.
But they came from last spot, so they were 9th last.
Yeah, but do you think that for them specifically, this was a blessing or a curse? Do you think that it's going to help them, go out of the group, that makes their, I don't know, strength of schedule any easier because of being seeded like that?
I think seed 1 doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easier and harder. It depends which team of different seeds you get. Because you can get a team that was just in the middle of the pack last year, so a seed 2 team that was the lowest in their own seeding group, or you can get Spain.
Yeah.
Which was, and that's a wildly different experience, because one of those teams can, for example, we never won against Spain on TTS 8v8 games. There's as a Polish national team. So I think there are some teams that you should look for. And
Why don't we go to pod 2 then? Let's transition to pod 2.
Yeah.
Pod 2 is one of the 2 UN teams, UN 1, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and Germany, whose team captain we interviewed for the purposes of Creme de la Creme, who is very confident going into this event.
Extremely
think
confident.
so
I know that
confident
Typhus
he
almost
placed
fell
at
in
least
love.
one bet that he managed to get convinced into. We'll see how that bears out. What are your thoughts, kind of, Nathan, on this pod specifically?
So this one's obviously United Nations teams. Is this one the Malta one or the? Which one's you?
I don't know.
I think A is the one. This is the one that has AdMech on it, and then A is the other one.
Right. Okay. I can't remember which one it is.
Doesn't help.
I know.
Yeah, so
I
the
can't
UN
remember
team,
either anymore.
UN
I'm
teams
sorry.
are basically a mix of people who are. I think we got to the point where we have 34 nations. So to make the pods easier, we added 2 effectively groups of teams. Both of them this year are predominantly one nation, but they have a decent amount of lurks in them to make up the full amount you need for a team. But for the actual pod, so UN teams usually are a little bit weaker because obviously they don't prep the same way as other teams. Luxembourg, lovely, lovely guys. I think they have the best shirts, but they are coming on leaps and bounds every year. Switzerland, again, always a perennial, aiming for that top 10, very good team, very, very well organized. And then you obviously have the mighty Germans, who, again, are one of the favorites for winning this event. I would still expect Germany to come out of this pod
without much of an issue.
No, not without much issue. And also, I think quite importantly, we can discuss it later, is how many differential points you come out with at the end. Yeah. And this is a good pod for Germany to come out with a lot of points to take through to carry.
I guess it's a good point to stop and talk about. So we have pool play, right? And then you talked about having differential points. So the teams with the differential points from this will be used for seeding the tournament that comes after, essentially, right? Yes. So the highest ranked will be playing the lowest ranked in battle point differential points between those, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And before we go further, I just wanted to ask, the UN teams, they are built up of, well, mercenaries, right?
Yes.
Is it difficult to become a mercenary? Could anyone become a mercenary?
There's a form that you can apply for to be a mercenary. And the idea for this year's UN teams was that there was a plenty of mercenaries applying to be within those UN teams. But what they've done is, if a given country was very close to forming their national team, you can say that both of those UN teams are, I think, Slovakia and Malta because they were missing players. So they tried to create teams that, moving forward, create an opportunity for those countries to then take part as a fully fledged national team.
All right. Okay. So let's move on. We have pot number 3. So Israel, Italy, Greece, and Sweden.
And Israel is one of the 4, I believe, new teams this year. We'll mention those teams kind of like as we go through. Thoughts? Typhus, why don't you start on this one?
So I think this is another pod that can be more touch and go. I don't think there is a clear-cut winner. Sweden came very, not even confident, very cocky this year. So whenever I see a team like that, I always have an inner smile like, are you though? So we'll see. We'll see. I think this is a team where there's one of the better seed 2 teams in, and by that I mean Greece. And also Italy, as far as I do remember, is the best seed 3 team. So I can see this pod also not going with a full 3 wins for Sweden. Maybe there's a draw happening, but we'll see. I think Italy-Greece also is a very interesting matchup. I think that one can be very competitive.
There's one more good question, kind of self-informing your audience. How do you decide who wins? Is it also differential? How do you tie in one of these situations?
So, like we discussed earlier, we have the sliding scale 0 to 20 system. You have 8 games, so a maximum score of 160. To draw the round, it is the 10 points in the middle. So between 75 and 85 is a draw. So to win a round, you need 86 points. To lose a round, it's 74 and below. I think another important thing to note is here, a win is worth 2 points, a draw is worth 1 point, and a loss is worth 0. So actually, 2 draws is the same as a win and a loss. So that sometimes when you do in the final standings, does actually make a big difference.
So it is possible to actually win the event with a draw?
Yeah, it's actually very uncommon for a team to actually go max wins.
I think only 4 teams in history of the game of WTC went completely winning all of the games.
All right. Okay.
So then we have Pod 4. Pod 4 has another one of our new teams, which is Cyprus, Northern Ireland, Denmark, and then the United States. Nathan, kind of what are your thoughts on this pod?
Yeah, so again, don't know much about Cyprus, but obviously they're here for the first time. They'll get used to it. It's a stepping stone for them. Northern Ireland have got their act together over the last few years. They've historically not been fantastic, but they're way more organized now, and they actually have a solid group on the team who are consistently at our home nations and those kind of events. Denmark had a rough year last year. A lot of the team changed, but this year it seems to be back to a lot of the regular players that they had in previous years. And in, say, 2019, 2018, and 2017, Denmark were one of the best teams. They were top 5.
2018, they were second
place.
And they used, during those years when there was basically Germany and Poland, they were one of those teams that could scrape away points
They
against
get points off big teams. Yes, and you had to pair into them going. It's going to be very tough. Yeah.
I'm still going to say that I am rooting very strongly for Cyprus. I might be biased because we did an interview with them, but I'm really always rooting for maybe not even the underdogs. I don't think they deserve that because we don't know if they are the underdogs. At this stage, I think with this meta, with this new addition and so on, anything could happen right now. So it could turn out that Cyprus beats, the top seeded teams perhaps. And I really hope that happens, that, that we have those positive upsets.
This feels
something
targeted.
like that.
This feels targeted, just like Nathan forgetting to mention the United States.
I was getting there. Oh yeah, USA's in there as well. That's it. I don't need to say it. Anyway, no.
That's fair. That's fair.
Again, lovely guys. One of the favourites. I would expect them to come out with at least 2 wins and a draw, probably 3 wins. But I think with teams like a new team like Cyprus, I don't know where they are, and then Denmark, who are back to the original stage, they might not come out with the same points they had.
I think that's fair.
All right, let's move on. Nathan, I would like you to read out the name.
You want me to read out? Pod 5 because the team specifically came up to me to tell me how to pronounce the
Now
name.
it's your time to redeem yourself.
Oh, good. So Czechia,
Wonderful.
Latvia, Austria, and the Netherlands. Thank you, Czechia, for coming and finding me. It wasn't actually even targeted at me. It was targeted at Innis, which was extra funny because they were talking about stat check more than anything else. Typhus. What are your thoughts on this pod?
So, Latvia came being dead last year. So, but still, we have so many teams that I don't know what happened that they are in a seed 3. Maybe it is wrong that they were seed 2 and like just the overlay is incorrect. But this is where I think Czech Republic, now Czechia, sorry, used to have a rather strong team, and they are coming back to it. So they are not the weakest team in that group. I think Latvia still has few mercenaries. Austria, their elder player just won War Masters.
Yeah.
So, and they have few really good players. The question is whether they put enough preparation for this year. And I know Netherlands, after last year's, they've put a lot of work. They've organized plenty of events and training camps. They travel to multiple team events to upskill themselves in the format. So I find that Netherlands should be the ones winning this group. It's not like the C2 here feels closer to the C1, knowing the historical implications of how they perform.
Would you say that this pod is in for a rude awakening?
Why?
Nice. Nice. Again, I will just want to mention that it's really good to have Czechia
Sorry.
or Czech Republic, as we call that country, back at the event, because I think for a couple of years we didn't have them. There were some, I don't know, ups and downs for them. Something was not working. Now they finally managed to build a team. They came united, and again, fingers crossed for them to kick the asses of the other teams. Completely unbiased.
So now, Tomik, you can do the next 2 pods.
Wow, the entire 2. All right, so we have pod number 6 with South Africa, with Wales, Finland, and Poland. I think South Africa. Trust me. Again, we did an interview with them. Go back and check it because
They're also one of the new teams this year.
they're also one of the new teams this year. So we felt that it was proper to invite them, to introduce them, and we would like everyone to actually be aware that a scene exists in that country, and they are playing Poland in their very first game. Typhus, how do you think this is going to go down?
Should we be PG-18 or?
We should probably be PG-13, just not
Yeah, yeah.
18. PG-18.
Yeah, I think that answered my question. I might be slightly cocky, but to be fair, this is their first round. They didn't have previous experience, and I know the Polish team is very much so prepared. That's a team that is historically average. Poland is the best country when it comes to average placing. They are not the best when it comes to winning the most events. So I think
Nathan laughing at that because it's just by a bit.
It's like one placement, basically,
Yeah.
for the
Yes,
second
yes, yes.
place teams.
yes,
But we do get the rights to brag about it.
still maybe not anymore after this year. But Finland historically was also a team that used to sometimes scrape a draw from tougher teams. I remember in 2016 we won against them by 1 point in round 1. So they are certainly a good team that can fight for it. They didn't come as confident when I spoke to them beforehand, so they might not have gotten as much preparation, or they might be just gaslighting me. So, but this is another pod where I think the winner is clear cut, and I think the difference between Wales and Finland is also big enough that maybe South Africa and Wales will fight on an appropriate level, but their first and second place are clear cut in that pod.
Nathan, any comment about this group?
Yeah, completely agree. Poland should run away with this group. And again, like we discussed earlier, they should be trying to maximize the amount of points that they'll get out of it. Finland, thankfully, they've gone back to more of their old team. They've changed a lot of people around. They've got a lot of older veterans who are definitely going to carry them into second place.
All right, so since we've ended this pod with you, let's start the next one also with you. So pod 7, we have United Nations A, which is the second United Nations team, Iceland, Scotland, and France.
Right. This one is the fun one. So
Explain.
we have, again, United Nations, who, again, predominantly one nation, but mostly mercs. Then we have Iceland, who have had some bad finishes, but they are quite heavy on the UK tournament scene. A lot of the team come over, and they've gone on to be very, very effective at getting to the latter stages of UK tournaments. So they've got this fantastic base in their team now, where they're going to start pushing to be in pod's second stage, and then ends. You've got Scotland again, a little bit. They've had some poor performances. They've had some fantastic performances. They've podiumed before, but they've got a really, really good group at the top who are dictating how the rest of them play, and they are becoming one of the better teams that can start pushing for a top 10, even top 5 placing. And then you have France. Again, they have podiumed before. Very, very, very good team. I would say they're a dark horse favorite, potentially.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the more open pods where I'm not sure I can pick a winner from that.
And there is also one spicy thing, because Iceland and Scotland are sparring partners, and we're preparing together for the whole time.
And right now.
And they are playing right now, so that one is also spicy, because they shared all the information. And they were together preparing for France as well. So I think they want that pod to go completely wild.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if Iceland and Scotland teamed up against France. But if you think about it, France, again, we did an interview with them for Creme de la Creme, so go back and listen to it if you haven't, because it's really, really insightful. But just to reveal a little bit from what was discussed, France is probably one of, if not the most invested teams into teams. So they have a league, like the first league, the second league, and the third league, all about teams, not singles. So they focus on this really, really, really a lot. And then they have like the entire system built around it to select the team, to select the players, and so on. I don't think any other team at this event has such a complex, but at the same time comprehensive way of selecting the team to represent them internationally.
They're probably the closest thing to what I'd call like a full esports setup for their league.
Pretty
and
much.
They're also as well funded as an esports league to get their team here and like well supported.
Yeah.
I think they're one of the teams that brought like a personal chef and stuff like that. We
And-
joked with their captain that they probably have enough money to afford a branded bus at some point. So I have kind of some expectations that that team could do very well based on the support kind of that community has created.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, a reminder, if you are interested in Team Francis games, the stream, not War Games Live, French Wargaming is there to stream in French. I know that they will be focusing French games, so make sure that you follow them. They are one of the partners of the WTC, so go check them out. Moving on to Pod 8, I guess.
I guess I should take the last two since it's only
Go on.
fair. Pod 8 is Bulgaria, Romania, Spain, and England. And I'm going to let Nathan and Tyvus talk about this in a second, but when I first looked at this actually looks like one of the pods that might have two teams that probably belong as top-seeded teams in Spain and England, and it could end up with them probably like beating each other up quite a bit. And we'll let Nathan go on this since this is England in this one.
I got
Yeah.
Poland. You should have England.
Yeah, so I actually think this is
Sorry for the
Australia.
New Zealand and Australia have just finished their pairings, and that was the hyping up of Australia.
That
Yeah.
was the chat.
right. Before I was rudely interrupted by Australians.
That sounds like a thing that just happens.
Yeah, that's pretty common. So yeah, we've got Bulgaria, Romania, Spain, and England. Bulgaria is another new team this year, but again, they have taken a couple of teams to our English team events every year, and again, they've been one of the better teams there. So they have a breadth. At least our teams are normally 5-mans, so they obviously have a very good base for their team, and they're playing England right now, and I think it should be quite a tough round. Romania, again, decent team. struggled a little bit last year, but kind of in the position where they are. Spain and England. Either of these teams could win this pot. I'm obviously going to pick England because I'm biased completely, but it's very much a case of we are going to play them in the most difficult round. So that mission choice makes it much more difficult to see who's actually going to win the round.
All right, Typhus, your feelings about this group?
So I agree with Nathan. I think England, pound by pound, has the best roster skill-wise at the event. But Spain used to be a dark horse, a team that would be very hot or not, depending on what's happening at the event. And what's more, Bulgaria. That's a team that was really good at ITT, and they've just gone into this event for the first time, and I think we might be sleeping on how good they are, seeing the games that I had to watch when I was refereeing the tournament in England. I find they will be very undervalued when it comes to their skill because they were good.
I'm kind of biased towards England because I drafted them for the fantasy stat check teams draft. In part because I was told I wasn't allowed to draft the United States, but also because they were probably the other team that I think is the strongest team in this. And I agree, although not an expert, with Typhus and Nathan that they are pound for pound probably the best team here. England, not the United States.
Yeah, that's a big argument.
Yeah, it's arguable because you get into some very subtle differences, right?
Yes, yeah.
And then Pod 9, New Zealand, the last new team, Portugal, Belgium, and then the team that keeps rudely interrupting us, Team Australia. Typhus, let's let you start with this.
So there's obviously reigning champions. So no surprises there. They brought another fantastic team. They again brought completely wild beasts. So what we could essentially expect from them. But then we have New Zealand, who's playing them round one after traveling 25,000 kilometers. Not great, but this is, I think, interesting matchup. But what I think is the biggest potential upset within this group is Belgium, because Belgium has one of the best players we have in the world, essentially, in Liam VSL. But how it works is Belgium are super prepared. They prepare for their best team they have in the group. They prepared really well for us last year when they drew Poland round one. And I think this can happen again, and I know for a fact they spend so much time preparing for the mission when they play Australia that one might be a surprise.
Nathan, what do you think?
Australia or New Zealand?
Australia. Australia should win. I think I was talking to one of the New Zealand players, and they felt they would be happy if they went 4-3, 3-4, that kind of position. But there's a lot on the line there. I believe we talked about. They came up to and talked to us earlier about which one of them invented Pavlova. So that's on the line here.
New Zealand brought a Pavlova from New Zealand that they had made in New Zealand.
Smashed in a box. So apparently that's on the line. But yeah, all jokes aside, it should be a fun round to see how that gets on.
So do you think that, and it might be a naive question perhaps, but do you think, Australia and New Zealand, as I mentioned, they travel a very, very long distance. All of them probably jet lagged, all of them possibly tired. Many of them have played in the War Masters as well, so that might play to be a disadvantage for them. Do you think that Belgium has the advantage of their own turf, that they didn't have to travel far, they are well rested? Do you think that might actually mean something?
If this was a more physical sport, yes, I would definitely agree. I think with war games, we can maybe get away with it a little bit more, hopefully.
And for the fact,
they've had time.
Yeah, a lot of the teams that had a long travel arrived here on Saturday, Sunday, so they had time to accommodate and adjust. So I don't think this is much of a factor because they had time to make this a non-factor.
I also think these teams are a lot of the teams this year seem to have brought a lot of support staff along, right? To make sure that the teams are well rested. They brought some of them recruited data scientists for their matrices. Some of them have personal trainers. Some of them have chefs. Some of them have people who are just here as runners. Or if the United States, you brought a whole nother like 50 people. They didn't really bring 50, but you know, there's like, it seems like to me, and I don't know, Nathan and Typhus, if you agree, there's like a lot more support staff being brought these last 2 years, and like teams are making kind of more of a concerted effort to like support their team members in a lot of different ways during these team events now.
There's a lot of focus on enabling the players to perform at their best.
All right. Okay. So, I think we are slowly coming to the point where we want to interview a guest. Do you think we can fetch someone?
I'll go for one.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to go fetch Diffie.
Diffie.
We're going to go fetch Josh Diffie from BCP. But while we're waiting, and because I think this is always fun, I'm going to ask a bird question. And Nathan, you get to answer your first bird question. So when I talked to Team England, I asked them this. Who do you think wins in a fight? A New York pigeon or a London pigeon, and why?
Ooh. I'm actually going to think about this.
That's right.
I've been to both. I think a New York pigeon has it.
Oh, wow.
A London pigeons, they're getting fat these days. And there's too many tourists and they keep getting fed and it's not great. Now, if we're talking New York rats, they'd win against everything.
That's fair.
But yeah, I'm going to go New York pigeon. I'm going to go New York.
Then the second question that I asked is who wins in a fight, a NASCAR fan or a soccer hooligan from England?
I'm going to go soccer hooligan because I've seen NASCAR fans and you could probably just run around them for a while. Yeah, hooligan fans, they're there to fight. I'd imagine the NASCAR one's probably pretty drunk in that one. I'm going to go soccer hooligan.
Hello.
So
Welcome.
this is Josh Diffie of Best Coast Pairings fame, who is here to talk to us about Best Coast Pairings.
Thanks for having me.
And then I'll ask you a bird question at the end. So why don't you tell us a little bit about BCP and kind of how it's supporting the WTC and stuff like that?
Sure. So Best Coast Pairings is the official tournament software partner for the WTC. So all of the pairings and army lists and all that jazz is
Logos.
is run through that. So for those following along at home, they can go to www.bestcoastpairings.com and follow along. If they go to bestcoastpairings.com/WTC 2023, that will take them straight to either the War Master event if you're interested in seeing the singles results, as well as the team event. And for those that subscribe using that link, it helps support the WTC.
And then who do you think who is your favorite team to win this team event? You know, I'm going to ask you the hard question first.
One very biased.
Yes.
So Team Australia.
If
If I had to pick someone else, I'd probably pick Poland.
Ooh, okay. And
You
what
made
makes you pick Poland?
you made Team Poland real excited, I think.
So
It's always interesting to hear what people from outside of Poland, outside of the continent, even have to say about us. So, what makes you think that Poland could take it?
well, Poland have a very good history at the WTC. That's for sure.
Yeah.
In addition, they played Australia in the final round last year, and it was a very, very tight round, but also a lot of really, really good games. And so, yeah, it was really good to see that. And I guess.
And what team do you think from the new teams is going to perform best at this event?
So we have
You can be biased.
we have
again.
Israel, we have Cyprus, we have South Africa, we have
Bulgaria and New Zealand.
and New Zealand. Do you think the Kiwis stand a chance?
I hope my brethren do. Yeah, my neighbours. I don't know enough about all of the new teams. I know about New Zealand, so I'm going to go with New Zealand.
Yeah.
There we go.
So
Yeah.
what, New Zealand players do come to Australia and play and scrim with Australian players, right?
Sometimes. So we have earlier in the year in May, we have a team called the Australia-New Zealand Team Championships. And so each state in Australia gets an 8-player team like WTC, and New Zealand gets a North and a South team. They don't really have states, so it's a little different. But yeah, so that's traditionally in Australia on the East Coast, but it does move around. And it's the same format as WTC. So you're, instead of fighting for your country, you're fighting for your state. But other than that, it's the same format. So yeah, we see them at least once a year, but often we see them at other big events as well. Yeah.
All right. I have one more question that I need to ask. And this is because I'm from Poland and because you've just won the hearts of Polish fans because you said that Poland is going to take it.
Please subscribe.
Well, that's what I'm going with. I guess I want to go with the question. So Poland is a country that still is experimenting with different systems, different rankings, and so on and so on. How would you convince them that BCP is the one to actually go for it?
So from a best coast pairings perspective, so we try to be as versatile as possible. So we're used with well over 50 different game systems, so card games, tabletop games, and so we've got a lot of different features within the site that helps it be flexible. So if you're an event that likes to do the big 2-point differential style like WTC, we have that. Traditional battle points, we have that. One of the things that we're doing for the Games Workshop events is specifically the 40K is a more detailed scorecard, but not too much.
Yeah.
It's obviously
Not like a full scorecard.
not a full scorecard, but being able to track things like mission. Did they use a gambit, which is just a tick box? All right. But then, I hear that some people might like stats, and so
Just a few. I might have gone up to Diffie like between things like, hey, instead of me wandering the floor like trying to take sneaky pictures of pairings and things like that to run back to my table, do you think you could help me with some stats stuff?
Yeah. So we, I'm aware there's obviously other systems out there, but we definitely have the largest pool of tournaments worldwide. And the more we can get in there, the more information that then becomes readily available, and it's free to use. So,
and I think it's also prevalent. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that right now, the world of 40K, the world at large, has grown a lot. Like there are players playing in all parts of the world and so on. But also we have different media outlets like but also StatCheck, Art of War and so on. Boonhammer writing about those events. But mainly, I think the easiest access to data from events and so on would be through your app, right?
we definitely have a lot of the large events. So, like especially from the UK and the US and Australia. That's not to say that there are some large French events that aren't using best coast pairings. But obviously, the more that's in there, the more it's available to then do some of that analysis.
And it's fairly convenient to pull that data from this right, as well.
I mean, if you work with Diffie, it is convenient.
I'm asking you because you do it on a regular
Most people don't like it when you scrape their website a massive amount of data, including best coast pairings. I do like one of my favorite things that came out of that new tracking stuff that you said from the detailed scorecard was some of the gambit data for singles. Like 3% of players were taking gambits, and then 7% of those were successful, or something like that.
Yeah, which means it's not a huge.
It's a very small number, but and it was just one event.
Yeah, so it's just interesting. As I said, the more we get in there, then the more that becomes. Well, I mean, that is a critical thing. So for those that want, people who have seen the MetaWatch articles that have come out and the different win rates and percentages of the various factions. So Best Coast Pairings provide a lot of that data to Games Workshop. So the more data that's in that's more than just America and the UK metas. All right, so everyone knows that not not all the same army lists get played everywhere. Obviously, they're the big bads, but different people come up with different ways of beating those, and so the metas are different where you are. The more data that's in there and that Games Workshop can see, and then obviously then use that to hopefully provide better either balance updates or whatever.
Yeah.
The better.
Yeah, because I have a feature question while we're here. Are we good for 10th edition? I know I'm just going to drag you in multiple directions at the same time. So we have the drop-down menu for factions right now. Are we going to try to get a detachments drop-down as well? Just put a mind worm in your brain.
You could probably look at something like that. I don't see that being too difficult. Probably.
And you guys can watch me live on like a stream, like bother Diffie with new options requests.
I'm a gamer. I'm a ref.
Yeah.
I'm a web developer. Working for Best Case Bearings has meant that I've been able to work on a hobby project that's no longer a hobby.
Yeah.
And so it's fantastic. So I love hearing different feature ideas. Sometimes we take them on. Sometimes we put them in the big long list that it might be down the bottom that we'll get to one day. And others, are fantastic ideas, and we try to put them in.
And I'm sure after this meeting, if you're probably just going to sit on the side and chat a lot.
Right. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for the interview. Right now, guys, we are going to transition to the interview with coaches of Scotland and Iceland, because as we mentioned previously, it is kind of possible that they might be preparing together to fight France. So let's see how much truth there is in
kind of
that.
cool.
So yeah, in a moment we will have them on. Stay tuned because they will be with us in a second. Thank you, Diffie.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Josh. Fun, guys.
We can chat later.
No problems. Come on, guys.
Or am I sitting here?
Yes,
Am
you
I
are.
helping the interview?
Yes, you are.
This is not what I expected.
Hello.
How we doing?
Hi.
You get the harsh accents of Europe.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Just make sure you're. Hi. Just make sure you're close to the mic so that it picks up the voice. So, guys, I guess. Well, first of all, introduce yourselves. Who are you? Why are you here? Why are we interviewing you?
So I'm Nick Malone. I'm the coach for Team Scotland. The reason we're here is because for when 10th edition was coming out, we kind of decided, okay, we're not like the big teams. It'd be good to be able to cooperate a little bit in terms of trying to unlock the secrets of 10th edition. So between ourselves and Team Iceland, we decided, okay, well, let's cooperate together. There's a lot of teams going to be here. The chances that we're going to play each other are quite small. So let's just bash it out. So we created the Discord. We did tons of analysis on the armies. We did a lot of reps. A bunch of the Team Iceland guys flew over to Scotland and played some games. We did a lot of prep together, a bunch of stuff. And then we drew the pods. And we got Team Iceland. So we're playing Team Iceland right now, round one. Fantastic. I mean, in terms of, it's a great way to start it. We all know each other. We've spoken a ton over the past few months, so it's been a great way to start the tournament. We know each other. We kind of roughly knew what was going to happen in terms of pairings and stuff. And I think both of us probably feel fantastic going into it because we know the other team. There's not really a surprise.
Right. So I wanted to ask about that exactly. Like, after playing together so much, talking on Discord, analyzing this, blah blah blah. Are there still any surprises, or are you best friends but just having a fight right now?
I think it's a small nation thing where it's a healthy competition, but it's really important. And that's what growing scenes Scotland has in Iceland.
Yeah.
So now it's about building up and building up. Of course, we're going to beat your ass, so that's going to be guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
So confidence level is very high. But I think it's always all communities built up together.
Yeah, moving the mic closer.
Exactly. But small communities built up together. They don't do it in separate pools in that sense. So, and we just had to draw something. We draw essence, so it's going to be a really good match.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah.
So did the pairings go according to plan or not so much? Again, I know that you probably knew what the lists potentially are going to look like, but the pairings, matrices, and so on, this is always something that could go a little bit awry, maybe. So again, did you get what you want?
We did. We were quite happy with how it went. Well, in terms of the pairings, our two captains actually did multiple practice sessions of just pairings. So even in terms of that, we kind of knew what to expect as first drops and things like that. From our point of view, we're comfortable with the pairings, but end of the day, it's a dice game. Anything could happen. So, but we feel good going into the round anyway. Yeah.
All right.
I think it's like a binary system. Either it's going to go this way or this way. So it's just lots of pairings. But I also think like maybe first turns are going to be something that could be like a factor.
Yeah.
It's never like a super disaster, but it might push it one way or the other. And
Yeah.
like, if people are preparing to like go big on the last turn or not, to hold back and things like that. And I think that's what player skill comes down. It's like that's like the moment where you go like, ha! I'm like scoring as much as possible and fuck off. So
I see that Nathan is choking for a question.
First, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
And then I'll ask my question.
So I'm Christian Blundal. I'm from Iceland.
Better late than never.
Yeah, I TO from tournaments in Iceland. We have regular RTDs like every month, and then 2 big GTs, and been doing regularly. I'm also really old, so I came in the original team to Serbia. So where we played twice and ranked the last place, win one most honorable opponent both times, and like 3rd place in painting. So that was a pretty good time. And Chilton was up, like fond memories for us old people that have been there.
And then my question for each of you, and Tyson, you can start first with the answer, is do you have a most exciting pairing that you were looking forward to seeing the results of from this round?
Like top table is Jökull and Innes. So like can't walk away that way. And then the Team Stealer Eldar matchup.
Yep.
And like I've been playing a lot of Eldar this week, and like that it's a pain in the ass. It's like so swingy. Like how does the Overwatch go? Does it go like swingy in one direction or not? And things like that. So like I think there's more variation when it goes crazy. It's like all of a sudden. It's just a question if it's a good target for it or not.
Yeah. For I'd agree with those 2 games. Another one for me is our guard player. So unfortunately, he's not our original guard player. On Monday, unfortunately, our guard player Rybo fell down with the chickenpox.
Oh no.
So he couldn't fly out. So we had to find a last-minute replacement. So Team America gave us Ben Jerkins, and fantastically nice guy. Be interested to see how it goes, because obviously we're used to our Rybo, who unfortunately couldn't make it, but we're used to how he plays, which is generally a little bit unorthodox to how most people would play guard. So looking forward to see how that go. And yeah.
Yeah. So fingers crossed that first of all that your player, gets back to proper health.
He's just a bit itchy right now. But yeah.
And then also thank you to Team America for sharing a play.
Yeah, very much
It's
thank you
amazing.
to
You do have
America.
a lot of extras.
Yeah, but I understand, that some fair play points are going in the direction of the US.
Yeah.
The other question that I have is, are you both going to work together now, real on the side, to see who can beat France?
I think like after this, it's like there's healthy competition, but after that, it's either team is going as far as we can. I think that's the focus on it. And I think a little bit like I wouldn't say it's solved, but I'm hoping like for next round it's more of a smooth like machine. It's been done once, and we get into the rhythm and things like that. I just hope all the small nations kick ass this year. I actually feel like the level is going up everywhere. As I say, I came here and was kicked my ass for 6 games.
With the Team France thing, although we did all this prep, we stopped talking kind of when the pod was released, but then we kind of went, well, we've got the big boogeyman Team France. So we started talking again about Team France. So we continued to prep for Team France. We then spoke with the other pod's members, UNA, yesterday. They're also going to communicate. So it's kind of where the whole pod itself, it's excluding Team France, are all sort of continuing to communicate to sort of try and battle that Seed 1 team. Luckily for Team Scotland, we're playing Team France in round 3, so everyone else can play them before we do. So we can find out as much as possible.
What they're doing.
Get a lot of first information.
Exactly. So hopefully it can go well, and one of us can take down the Giants.
We'll take the breakfast duty for you guys.
Yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. Listen, guys, thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And to our viewers, stay tuned, because in a few moments we will have Denise. Joker is showing me something. So Denise from Team Australia is going to be right with us to talk about their pairings into New Zealand. So thank you guys. It's been a great
Thank you very
pleasure.
much.
And
Thank you so much.
good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, and great show, man. Great show.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Ah,
Oh, we're gonna move closer together, Tomek.
yeah, we're getting closer and closer.
We only went across a whole ocean and then across another
Pretty much.
continent to meet each other, right?
I mean, but in no other place would this be possible. I mean, I wish people could see what we see right now, which is like the sea of people. And here he is.
Oh,
you
you
guys.
can share it. You can choose.
Look at him,
Next to my boy Thomas.
all smiling, all happy. Did the pairings go the way you wanted them to go?
It was good, man. It was good. I think the big one for all the teams is getting out of the first round jitters. Obviously, we're not the only team that's traveled very far. A lot of teams have come a long way. New Zealand, a new team to the event. It's great to see them. It's funny we're playing them, halfway across the world.
That's our fault.
Yes. Well, I guess one thing to do is why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers because Tomek's skipped right over it.
Yeah,
These are good mates.
I mean, no, I honestly think that the majority of the world knows Team Australia, and the majority of the world knows the coach of Team Australia. Denise, I'm gonna butcher your name, Liaganama.
Oh, that's Yanagama.
Liaganama.
Very close. Yeah.
Right. I'll get it at one point, definitely. But everyone knows you.
Thank you, man. I don't think they all know me, but it's great to be here and obviously great to see you.
No, I mean, okay. So let's start with, since we are doing the introductions, where can people hear you on a regular basis? And maybe that will ring a bell.
Yeah, so me and our, Captain Liam Hackett run a part of the Normal Roads podcast. So we make content through that. Find us on Facebook, on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you do your content. And yeah, we've done some crossover at Flip with you guys as well. But yeah, I think it's good to see the guys finally, getting models moving. And I think the first round jitters out of the way, when they start to just get the rep in, we can. In terms of the pairings, I guess if you want to dive right into it. Yeah, a couple of.
I'm going to move closer to so I can see the pairings.
So I've purposely hidden some scores here, but a couple of the things we were happy with is getting some of the big scaries out. Getting the GSC out, getting the Eldar out was really good. And I think allowing some of our other lists to operate more freely when they were gone was really nice. Another big list that New Zealand had was Alex Taus on the Imperial Knights. The three big knights of the Atropos was something quite challenging for our Titanic list. So managing that was interesting. I think we've got some pretty good predictions for the rounds, and now it's, I guess, the players' turn to deliver and see how it lands.
So do you have a pairing that you think is the most exciting pairing for you? And then what do you think is maybe a questionable pairing, one that you're kind of worried about?
Yeah, look, I think the data shows Imperial Knights versus Eldar is very much in favor of the Eldar. I think that's what, is quote unquote common knowledge. We got that matchup with our Imperial Knights. So we're keen to see how Will goes. Will just came out of, he got to the shadow round of singles with Custodes. He played a grand total of one game with that army before, so he's a bit of a magician. So we're keen to see what he does with an army that he's got reps on. And really interesting one that we haven't seen much of is how our CSM goes into Deathwatch. A lot of teams do Deathwatch. I'm really excited to see how it goes. So,
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your CSM list, just kind of like and the Death Watch list that it's going into in a second.
Yeah. So Jeremy on the CSM. It's a great little picture. I'm seeing.
Preparing this to display this because I put that effort.
You can see a little bit of our a little bit of our preparation for you guys as well.
I think it's honestly with the CSM list. A lot of the CSM lists we're seeing are following a very strong mold. We've got Abaddon, we've got the Forge Fiends, the Blitz. We're seeing the Changeling pop up, which is really exciting. A nice addition to a lot of either CK or CSM, even G-Suns lists. So it's honestly nothing crazy with that. I think the marks and how they work is really interesting, and the strength of the Dark Packs and a lot of the shooting units is going to be what carries them. And yeah, the Death Watch list is something that I've had the pleasure to play and practice a few times. And David Gaillard's obviously a a great tactician and operator. You know?
I borrowed his list for singles. So
I've heard this story.
And I also heard that Morozoli couldn't help himself with a certain joke.
We'll share the story a little bit later when we
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
But I played his list in singles, and it was very nice of him to bring it for me, although also regrettable later. But
Yeah.
I have had the pleasure of playing, and I've also had the pleasure of playing Will, who's a wonderful individual.
Yes.
So I'm kind of excited. I also got very traumatized by the changeling, so seeing this makes me deeply upset. Which I guess I'll share that story. I was playing into one of the Team Netherlands players and moved a Proteus kill team forwards to do something extremely important. And the changeling turned off my Proteus kill team shooting, and then also proceeded to turn off its combat in the following phase by me failing a battle shock test.
Oh my goodness.
So I have some deep trauma when people say they're bringing the changeling and like stuff like
It's
that.
just you just can't predict when that 6 picture. So,
Yeah.
no, it's going to be exciting, and I think one of the cool things about coaching, obviously for me, it's quite rewarding and satisfying that we're getting front row seats to this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, honestly, we're getting front row
We have
seats
the
to the
best
best
seats in
games
the house
on the
to
planet.
that,
Yeah, so that's super cool, and I'm keen to see it.
So, in preparation for this event, I sent out a request to the captains of all the teams to fill in a certain questionnaire with some info about the players that we, as the studio, could use to, to add some spice to the conversations and so on. And I had this brilliant idea that perhaps we should create cards with players that you can see on the screen right now.
Some of our teams gave us some very interesting player pictures, which we've been enjoying on the side.
Yeah.
To young Eric on the shoulder of Alex there, that's great.
So what's up with having a French guy on the team?
Oh, he's not French, he's Australian.
Well, that's what Liam wrote. He said he's the only good painter on the team in Australia because he's French.
We'll claim that's why he can paint. Yes, all our other models are spray painted one color with 3 color dots.
Oh,
That's
right.
Australian painting.
Okay.
I will also say we gave you the diamond borders because you won last year, so you guys get the fancies.
Tiny.
The next one that I want to share is the carpet of gaunts, I guess.
The gargoyles, yeah. Salt boat gargoyles.
So again, a player originally from the UK, I understand. Doesn't Australia have their own players?
No, it actually turns out, man, that all the players that actually want to win, they just come to Australia.
Oh, that's actually why I come back.
Yeah, so, I know, we can't help it.
Did you expect to get so many questions about where all your players are?
I guess you need to appreciate also that this is like a diamond card.
Yeah,
I did the same for Team Poland, but they are only golden. Still
Ooh,
elite, but
oh,
golden.
Because
But
they got second.
I know where your allegiance is lying.
Yeah.
Clearly.
then we have this one, this
Young
gem,
Chris.
Chris Wright. So again, the pictures came from Liam because essentially he couldn't get them from the team, so he picked them himself. So you
Yeah,
can blame Liam.
there's like 3 individuals in this team that make a lot of memes, me myself included. So none of these are actually from Liam, made by Liam.
Okay.
Yeah, outsourced, yeah. And the classic Martino and Soli from the victory picture.
Chris,
Dylan with the
Josh.
normal block shirt. I love it.
Liam,
He
obviously.
gave himself a good one. That's
Of course he did.
Are those lucky shorts or does he have another player?
You'll see the lucky shorts on the final day. He's got pink and white Hawaiian pants that he wears
All right.
on really
For special
You
occasions.
gotta save the luck for the important rounds, right?
That's
The
it,
most
yeah.
important rounds.
And big Soli. So definitely spat on his head. Yeah. Why does he have a gold one?
I don't know.
That's awkward.
Oh, no, I went with different ones for no, that's this way. I don't know.
I'll let him know.
You'll let him know.
I'm big Will Mill.
Right. So I hope you've enjoyed these. I definitely enjoyed making them. I learned a lot. Now back to your pairings. Did they go according to plan?
Yeah, look, like we kind of mentioned, someone has to fall on the hard games. Yeah, it's not as if everyone's got a great game into things like Eldar. So planning how that was going to fall, I think with our pairings team of Matt Rossoli and Darren Martino, they really did a good job. We've got a few quite strong ones. Liam can hold his own into a lot of things, and Custodes are another army that really hard to handle. In a matter that. A lot of people are expecting mobile shooting. You've got an army that can actually punch on and hit hard. So, we hope that's going to go well for him. So I think the parents team did a great job. New Zealand, it's their first WTC, so I'm keen to see how they go, and they'll probably surprise us honestly in a few games. But yeah, look, I think they did a great job, and we're just going to sit back and watch them play now.
So I need to ask one more question before we let you go. I don't know if you've listened to Enter the Matrix, the podcast done by Typhus and Nathan, and they did an episode on you. So, well, on your team. And they mentioned a couple of things. One of them saying that, well, you've put the bar extremely high for yourselves last year, and that you're probably bound to be one of the upsets, that's their words, not mine, of this event, because it's just extremely difficult to match last year's performance. You know, most friendly team to play, winner of the team event, winner of the singles event. So
I think it's always important to set expectations, appropriately. And I and the team think we can do it again. We think we can win it again. We're dead serious about that.
not unseen.
I would definitely say that you are a favorite to win it again.
So we're confident in that. But in realizing that, we understand that sometimes, there are circumstances required to win. There's a bit of luck, a bit of skill, a bit of experience, a bit of a lot.
Absolutely.
So, we are excited to see how we go.
So about the skill and experience, that's the second part that they mentioned in their podcast. Last year you had Eric, and I think you had one more player. I can't remember the name right now, so apologies for that. But one more player who is not there today. So you've refreshed the roster, so to say.
Yes.
Again, do you feel? And probably it's too early to say, but do you feel like that? I don't know. Eric is missing, for example.
I think Eric is very much been a part of the prep this year as well. The players that aren't returning, Eric Brothers, Hayden Waldock, Simon Glukovic, and Matt Jackson, they were awesome last year. But a lot of these players that we brought this year, who are kind of fresh players, they spent a lot of time with those existing players in their states. And we've also got a lot of other experiences to draw from. Brody's a classic example, coming from the UK, playing in the UK DC with a lot of these top players in Europe. So massive assets in the team. I don't see any reason why this team's not just as strong.
Yeah. And it takes, like you said, all of those players are involved in the prep, so it kind of takes like a whole country essentially to support a country's team, right?
Oh, and look, on that topic, like with the win last year, the amount of support we've had from the community in Australia, all over Australia, even not where the players are from, has been amazing. They've crowdsourced and funded our trip. They've helped a lot, and even in the prep work and getting armies together, that was a big part of it. So I'd like to say, while I'm here, a massive thank you to the Australian UK community. So,
All right.
We'll let you get back to your team.
Awesome. Thank you guys
very much for coming in.
You're doing a great job on the stream. Good
Well,
stuff.
thank you so much.
And fingers crossed.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure we'll find you later.
Yeah.
Oh, I like the confidence.
All right, everyone. I think we will wrap this up.
For a little while.
Yeah, for a little while. So we will let the teams play their games. We will let the games unwind, and we will be coming back to you as we've shown in the schedule. We actually might bring it up on the screen in a moment for you to see. So our intention is to come back closer to the end of the round, where we can discuss how the games are going. We have now Typhus and Nathan walking around the venue, also with a camera. So they are, trying to scout and check what is going on. They are going to also check how certain lists play, because I know from their podcast and also from the other podcasts that we've done that Australia, Spain, Portugal, different teams, they've brought certain lists that even Typhus and Nathan still don't understand how they function. So it's going to be extremely interesting to find out what they learned, what they saw. So we will bring them in closer to the end of the round for your viewing pleasure.
Yep. And I'm sure at some point we'll also start asking more bird questions.
Absolutely.
Because I know that the people watching this stream are enthusiasts for them for some reason.
Yeah, I see that someone even wanted us to include the favorite bird information on the cards that we've just displayed. So
we will take suggestions also for next year. Hopefully we'll be invited back, and hopefully you all enjoy this stream. And we'll make sure to include, maybe it won't be birds next year. Maybe we'll ask our viewers what they want for animal questions for next year.
Exactly.
Maybe they won't be animal questions.
Let's spice it up with something else.
Yeah, we could ask for favorite tree.
For example. With that, guys, we thank you for your attention. We invite you to continue watching our future iterations of the show. And yeah, we will be back soon with some spicy details. Thank you. Until next time.
Bye-bye.